Hello, my name is John Rose, and in this video I'd like to take a closer look at some common concerns a lot of people have with our ideal diet of raw vegan plant food. And I'm going to take advantage of this video to reply to a comment I got this morning that I read where a woman had 4 really good concerns about eating a raw food diet. Her first concern had to do with the fact that what we eat depends on where we live, and that's very true. Her second concern was that there's just not enough fruit to feed the world, and currently that is true, but that won't be true in the future. Her third concern was that fruit will not provide us what we need for strength and for energy. And fourth, she said that God gave us starchy vegetables, grains, and legumes. And let's work backwards on that one. God did not give us the anatomy to eat grains. We don't have crops, we don't have gizzards. And God didn't make a mistake and forget to put a stove on our back, which is the only way we can eat those foods. We weren't eating those foods in the Garden of Eden, and that's when we had paradise. The only time the Bible actually tells us what to eat is Genesis 1:29, and it was a raw vegan diet. We weren't eating animals, and we weren't eating cooked food in the garden, which was a place where we didn't have any problems that were within our control, which is attainable again if we stop eating the wrong food. So, God did not give us the anatomy to eat grains. We're not grainivores, we are clearly frugivores like all the other primates on this planet. Same anatomy. Working back upwards, fruit doesn't give us the energy and the strength we need. Well, as a world-class athlete, I can tell you that's totally false. I've made 2 major dietary changes. The first one, I went vegan, and yes, my endurance level skyrocketed, going from a sad diet to a plant-based diet. But then when I went raw, it's a huge difference, much better. I've coached lots of athletes, world-class athletes, who go raw and they go from finishing mid-pack to winning every race. And you can go down to the description box below and watch a video when I was on the Deborah Duncan show. One of my 6 students that came on there was a professional mountain biker. And he says, I saw John on TV, what he said makes sense. I stopped using pasta and grains to carbo load, where I was only finishing mid-pack, and did a 30-day juice fast and started eating fruits to carbo load. Now I'm winning every race or coming in second place. So the fact that we do better on our ideal diet only makes sense. There's plenty of energy in fruit if you know how to eat enough of it. A lot of people don't. They don't realize how much they have to eat, and they're not used to doing it. As a world-class athlete, I can tell you right now, I have no problem sitting down and eating a lot of food because I earn my food. I get out there and go for long bike rides. When I'm finished, I'm hungry. A lot of you people don't have much of an appetite because you're not doing anything. Get off your butt, develop an appetite, and let's see how much you can eat then. So we know that God didn't give us the anatomy, so that premise is false. We know that the best food for endurance athletes, all peak performance athletes, is our ideal diet, no question. And then, is there enough fruit to feed the planet? No, not right now. As I've mentioned before, we don't live in ideal times anymore. We've damaged society and the environment. Food should be grown everywhere. And if we can ever reach the tipping point, we'll get to a point where we will play our role as the guardians on this planet and make sure everybody has their needs met. We have the technology now where we can actually still live where we're living and have food flown into us, but that's not ideal. So let's go to her very first concern, which is a really interesting concern that we have to address. What we eat depends on where we live. Yes, very, very true. For example, 40,000 children die every day because of where they live. Why aren't they eating their fruits and vegetables? Why aren't we feeding them is the bigger question. What's wrong with us? Something is wrong with us, and what's wrong with us is we're eating cooked food. So this is what people don't get. If you don't have the big picture, you don't understand the simple solution and how important raw food is. Sure, you can find a lot of reasons why it seems like raw food's not going to work, and it's not for everyone. And that's a valid point. How can you feed everybody raw food? We're not set up to do that right now. This is going to be, we got to reach the tipping point, number 1. That's why I say this over and over and over. Things will never change unless we reach the tipping point. Once we reach the tipping point, then things will change so fast, the majority of us will be doing this. Everyone will start to realize that we're connected to everything around us, and there's only one way to improve the quality of our lives, and that's to make everything around us better. That's when we become the guardians we were meant to be. We're not doing a very good job right now. Once we get our act together and we become the guardians we're meant to be on this planet, our main goal and role is to make sure everything has their needs met. And we make everything better. And we give, and the more you give, the more you receive. We got the wrong mentality, which comes from eating the cooked food. So what do we do in the meantime? Well, we got to do damage control. That's why I say over and over and over, there's two groups of needs we must satisfy. We got to go upstream, get reconnected. We got to go downstream, deal with the damage we've done to ourselves and the society and the environment. We should have food growing everywhere. There's no reason why there shouldn't be berries everywhere, and these can't be fruit trees, and that should be we should be able to do that everywhere on this planet. And if you're living in a place where you can't grow those trees, what does that tell you? If that's our ideal diet, then you're not living in our ideal world, or where you're supposed to live. So an ideal diet only works in an ideal world, and we no longer live in an ideal world anymore. That's why we have another group of needs. If you're in England, for example, you're probably not getting enough sunshine. You need vitamin D. Is that an excuse to say, I got to eat the animals because that's not our ideal diet? I got to supplement it. Apparently it's not our ideal diet. No, we have two groups of needs based on two anatomical limitations. We have to respect our first anatomical limitations. We have a species-specific diet. It doesn't include animals and grains and processed foods and chemicals. And it doesn't include cooking our food. No animal is supposed to cook their food, period. Now, she pointed out that raw food is therefore not for everybody because where they live too far north. Try to convince the Eskimos to eat raw food. Well, actually, of all the people to convince to eat raw food, they'll be the easiest, and that's an interesting point. Convince anybody to eat raw food, that's a tough sell. But if you're going to try to sell that idea to the Eskimos, it's an easier sell for them because the word Eskimo is derived from an American Indian language. And it means he eats it raw. He eats it raw. That's what Eskimo means. And when you look at our species, we've been eating cooked food consistently for about 60,000 years. The Eskimos only have done this recently, so actually it'd be a lot easier to convince them to go back to that unless they're just addicted to their food like everyone else is, and this is the problem. So cooked food addicts and apologists try to rationalize why we can't eat raw food. Well, yes, we don't live in an ideal world anymore. How do you feed everybody when they're not living in the right place? Well, if we can reach a tipping point and get connected, we'll have plenty of food to grow because you can grow more food per acre using fruits and nuts than just about any other food. Have you never been to an orchard? Have you never been to a blueberry farm? Again, there's no reason why this whole field couldn't be covered with food. Everywhere we go, we got food, except for places we're not meant to live. But if we get our act together, we can possibly populate the whole planet and just ship the food out there, and it won't be costing anybody anything. But the chances are, once we wake up to this reality of what we're supposed to be doing, I have a feeling a lot of people, even though their ancestry goes back to a certain area, they're going to want to get out of there. And I know that a lot of people aren't going to want to, but I can see why a lot of people will migrate to a climate that's more soothing so we can be out here like I am, half naked, which is how you're supposed to be. In fact, I can feel sweat perspiring off me right now. And there's not any kind of a breeze going on right now, but if I was wearing a shirt, I'd be sopping wet right now. I walked to the store the other day with a shirt, and I was fit to be tied by the time I got home because I had this wet shirt on me, and it was so hot, my skin couldn't breathe. So, a good rule of thumb, if you have to wear clothing to live where you're living, you're really not living where you're meant to live. Doesn't mean you can't live there, and you shouldn't be able to enjoy the beauty that's up there. But keep in mind that if you're going to do it now, it might not be as easy for you to satisfy your needs as well as you can. So, what do we do if we live in England and we don't have enough money to buy the fruit because it's so expensive? Well, you make do, don't you? You eat the next best food. You go to your grains, your whole plant foods, and you go ahead and cook them, but now you're cooking them. You're better off learn how to sprout that food instead. So we can get around the cooking issue by going to sprouts. So there's an option there. However, we really need to look at what's most sustainable for us to do in the long term, and that is to go back to the diet we were meant to eat, and that's a raw vegan diet. So I know how hard that is for most people. I know most people have a hard time eating better of the good, more of the good stuff and less of the bad stuff. So where do you start? Well, the best way to start is to give yourself a solid food vacation. You can go down to the description box below and you can see the first of a 3-step process that I perfected. That will allow you to see what you're missing, because that's the biggest problem most of us have right now. Most of us have dietary concerns because we don't know what we're missing. It's really that simple. And we're not going to think it's a fair trade. So what do we have to do? We have to do something on a temporary basis so we can see what we're missing. And then realize that life is an illusion. And we need to figure out some way to live the way we were meant to live. If that means you got to move, that means you got to move. If that means you get out there and help promote this message to get us to the critical mass, to the tipping point, the 100th monkey, then that's what you need to do. In fact, that's the best solution for all of us, is play your role on the hero's journey, continue on and share this message so we can reach the tipping point and put an end to this needless suffering. And when you do this, your life is going to have purpose, and I guarantee you, you're in for a treat.